When convenience store manager Rhonda Ward doesn't show up for work, her family starts to worry.
I kept calling her cell and her house number. You know, Rhonda, pick up your phone, quit playing games, you know.
It was not like Rhonda not to show up. I called the police station and I insisted that something be done.
At first, police are told there is no sign of Rhonda on the store surveillance video.
We checked with the place of employment, and we were told by them that she did not show up on the video on that day.
Then, 24 hours later, a startling discovery.
They had reviewed the video, and it did show her pulling into the parking lot of the business.
You could see a white female exit the vehicle from the driver's side and what appeared to be a black male approach her.
Police believe 32-year-old Rhonda Ward has been abducted.
And it was very crucial that people know that she was in some kind of peril in the event that they may have saw her.
Puzzling questions remain, but one thing is certain. Rhonda Ward is not only missing, police believe her life may be in serious danger. Investigators in the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office closely examine the surveillance video from the store where Rhonda Ward works.
We probably watched it 100 times. It was grainy, but you could see a vehicle pull into the parking lot that the city had already identified as Miss Ward's vehicle.
Not everyone is convinced that Rhonda was abducted.
There was some of those who felt like she just got in the car with a possible boyfriend that we didn't know about, a friend, and there was others who felt like she got into the car unwillingly under duress.
The poor quality of the black and white video makes it difficult for investigators to see crucial details.
There were traits we could see and characteristics. You know, black male, certain height probably. Short of that, there was no way to identify him from the videotape.
Investigators can't tell if the man in the video carried a weapon.
There was not a visible weapon that you could see in the video. However, you certainly couldn't rule that he had one out.
And Rhonda's position by the car door strikes investigators as strange.
It was odd that Miss Ward never actually got away from her vehicle. She stood kind of in the opening of her door, which if it was a friend, if I knew you, I'd reach out with a hand, hug you, something like that. There was no hugging. It was a brief conversation, if it was a conversation at all. There was no audio to the video, so we don't know what the communication is.
You can see on the tape by how she's moving, like back and forth almost, that she's considering a path of escape. But she's pinned in. There's nowhere for her to go. The only way that she can move is forward, and that's where he's at.
We watched it so many times, trying to figure out why she didn't blow the horn, why she didn't lock the doors, why she didn't drive off. I don't know why Rhonda reacted the way she did, other than the will to live and survive.
Rhonda's family is questioned about the man.
I had no idea who this person was. I had met all of Rhonda's friends. And if she, you know, had a new boyfriend or what have you, she would always tell me about it, and if she didn't, the kids would tell me about it.
Investigators issue a BOLO, a be on the lookout for Rhonda and her car, a white Nissan sedan.
I was hoping at some point that we would run across her car in the parking lot of a hotel, or maybe even that we get a phone call from a hospital saying, you know, we have this patient here, she was injured, but she's okay. That was the hope.
24 hours after Rhonda's disappearance, there is still no news.
When nobody turns up, that's usually bad news, and a good bit of time had gone by. The question you ask is, why is it happening? What happened that day to cause it?
Friends and co-workers describe Rhonda Ward as responsible and hardworking.
She worked for a convenience store that people go in and buy cigarettes and other little whatnots.
Miss Ward was a manager there. She was very punctual. She was supposed to be at work at 7 a.m. This occurred around 6:50.
According to the employer, she was an A1 employee. Her money was never short. Her inventory was never wrong.
Away from her job, Rhonda's life was built around her kids.
She loved the children dearly, and she would never, ever drop her kids off to go to school and disappear. If she ever went anywhere, she would always call me and let me know where she was going.
She would go home and cook and then come back and, go to work. That was her only routine. That's all she ever did. Work, come home, take care of the kids.
After talking with her family and friends, investigators are convinced that Rhonda was abducted.
And it wasn't good. She hadn't turned up. We really believe that, it was a quiet abduction.
2 days after Rhonda Ward's disappearance, police get a disturbing 911 call. The caller says that 24 hours earlier, he'd seen an empty white sedan parked on a roadway next to a rural fruit orchard.
He thought it was kind of odd. Nobody was around the vehicle, but not suspicious enough to notify anybody, just that it was odd. He went to work and was speaking with some co-workers, and one of the co-workers said, that sounds like the car that had been featured on a local newscast in reference to this abduction.
The next day, when the caller returned to the orchard, the car was gone.
He proceeded to get on his ATV and proceeded to ride the trails down around the orchard.
Within minutes, he makes a shocking discovery.
He found a body.
Investigators race to the scene.
When we made it to the location, we saw a Caucasian lady. She was disrobed. She had a gold watch on. She was laying face down. Her hair was actually covering her face. It had rained the evening before. She was still cool to the touch. She apparently had been there more than 6 hours, but not as many as 48 hours.
It is clear the woman died a violent death.
She was naked. She had no clothes on. Obviously, she was stabbed several times.
We did have the photograph that was provided from the family from the initial missing person report that we were pretty confident that it was Miss Ward.
The body is sent to the medical examiner for processing. Rhonda's mother-in-law makes the positive identification.
This is an experience that I truly would not want anyone to have to go through. And I do remember that day, it was like a piece taken right out of you to see someone that you really care for just lying there lifeless.
I didn't want to believe it was her. But then finally it sunk in, that it was her. It was her.
All trace evidence, including a rape kit, is sent to the State Law Enforcement Division. Forensic teams scour the crime scene for evidence.
We started the road and we processed the scene all the way to her body, which was approximately 300 to 400 yards off the roadway. And processing means basically we're taking photographs, we're videotaping, collecting anything that looks unusual, such as debris. There were some shotgun shells that were actually there because this is a hunted area. They bird hunt the area. The condom was found. A condom wrapper was found in the area.
But some key evidence is missing.
The car's not there. There's no purse there. We find no weapon. No clothing was found at the location of where her body was found.
The absence of clothing offers the only possible motive, that Rhonda was sexually assaulted and then murdered.
This guy had a signature, and it was a violent, brutal signature.
Investigators canvassed the rural area looking for clues.
We went to the next closest street and just went door to door knocking on houses. Anybody here see anything? There was some witness that saw Miss Ward and a black male subject walking away from the vehicle.
A lady driving down the road had seen Rhonda actually being taken into the peach orchard.
And it was learned that some folks in the neighborhood did see her vehicle, was the white Nissan, was driven away in the area occupied by a male subject, an African-American male.
But witnesses can't identify the male or even say if he's the same man on the security video.
There's no question that this was a difficult case. You didn't know who he was. There's, what, 300,000 people in Spartanburg County. How many black males are in Spartanburg County? 60, 70,000. That's just guessing. He is from Spartanburg County. He's from anywhere in the nation.
Detectives review their evidence. A grainy security tape shows Rhonda's abduction by an unidentified African-American male. Rhonda's nude body is found with multiple stab wounds. Rhonda's car, her clothes, and the murder weapon are all missing. And eyewitnesses describe an African-American male with Rhonda at the murder scene and driving away in her vehicle.
It's gone from a missing persons to a homicide investigation.
And the only apparent link, an unknown African-American male. A violent and dangerous killer may well be on the loose. "32-year-old convenience store manager Rhonda Ward is found stabbed to death in a South Carolina orchard.
She was a very soft-spoken person, very tender-hearted person. And since she and my son had separated, she wanted to do something for herself. So I had talked her into going back to school, working toward a promotion on her job. And that she was doing. And she was very proud of herself for getting a promotion and running the store on her own.
She was my firstborn. She loved life. She loved her kids. She just was a very good person. She took care of everybody. She just loved everybody to death.
She was the big sister, definitely. Always looking after me, making sure I was doing right. I was scheduled to go out there that Christmas, but I never got to get out there and see her.
The violent nature of Rhonda's death stuns the community. Investigators work to calm her frightened neighbors.
There were a lot of people in the community in uproar over the fact that, something like this could happen in their community.
There was no doubt there was an element of fear in the community after her. You just don't have murders like that. That's the way she was killed is very indicative of a serial killer.
As a father and a husband, I feel the same way everybody else does. How could this happen in Spartanburg?
Results of the autopsy reveal that Rhonda died of multiple stab wounds to the chest.
This is a series of maybe 5 to 10 stab wounds. There's not a lot of bruising. She's not disfigured. I mean, I hate to say it, he was very proficient with what he had to do. And also, there were some defensive wounds around on her hands. And it looked like that she had put up a struggle or actually had to defend herself against the suspect.
No foreign matter is found under the victim's fingernails.
Oftentimes in a murder case, there's a struggle. And the good thing to do is to take samples from the fingernail scrapings to determine whether or not perhaps there was scratching and some tissue may have been left under the fingernails. I have found DNA from a suspect under fingernails from victims, but in this case, only DNA I found was hers.
Tests of Rhonda's blood show no sign of drugs or alcohol. The rape kit is processed for possible DNA.
I looked at the slides from her vaginal smear and found spermatozoa, which is certainly conclusive for the presence of semen. And then I took her vaginal swab and I did develop a DNA profile from the semen on the vaginal swab.
The DNA profile is entered into a national computer database that stores DNA samples from labs all across the country.
There were no matches, and so we knew we had a profile from an unknown contributor.
There is one possible lead. Follow-up interviews with Rhonda's family and friends points to an ex-boyfriend as a possible suspect.
He did match the description as far as the physical makeup of the individual that we saw. So we interviewed him,
The boyfriend works as a school bus monitor.
So we rode the route to see if there's any way he could have somehow abducted Rhonda, murdered Rhonda, made it back to school, make it back on the bus on time, and he was working that day.
The man says he's innocent. He offers his stamped time card as an alibi.
Time cards can be wrong too, because people stamp their time cards for them or sign in for them. So you take it, I think you have to take it a step further and actually do your homework.
The suspect's photo is added to a lineup and shown to an eyewitness near the crime scene. The results are surprising.
I spoke with a witness that saw the vehicle with a black male subject leave the area, and we did present her with a lineup. She did identify an ex-boyfriend of Miss Ward's.
But the man insists he had nothing to do with Rhonda's death, and his co-workers back him up.
There were 6 different people who put him at the school at the very time that surveillance camera was capturing that image.
As a precaution, investigators send his DNA sample to a state lab. Investigators have little else to go on.
You've got a body, you know that person's been murdered in a brutal and disrespectful way, and certainly we felt pressure to solve it.
As investigators dig deeper, they get word of a 911 call in neighboring Greenville County. Police there have located the burnt-out remains of Rhonda's car.
Other than the rear trunk and bumper area, the car is completely burned. It looked like an arson fire. The officers that were there at the scene, they had identified this abandoned house as a drug house. The driver of the vehicle was probably associated with the use of drugs.
The car is carefully processed for evidence.
No fingerprints. I mean, it's very rare that you recover fingerprints on a burned vehicle due to the heat. It was determined that the radio was not in the vehicle. There was not evidence of it in the dash, nor was there evidence in the debris that was removed from the vehicle.
Nothing in the car leads to the identity of the driver. At the same time, test results come back that eliminate Rhonda's ex-boyfriend, the school bus monitor, as a suspect.
I did test his sample and found that he did not match the DNA from the semen in this rape kit.
With no active suspect and no apparent motive, investigators review the evidence. DNA from the semen has no match in the National Criminal Database. Blood tests show no illegal or prescription drugs in Rhonda's blood. Rhonda's burnt-out car is found near an abandoned crack house with the radio missing.
We felt that that individual that was in the car was either a part of the homicide or actually the suspect in the homicide.
Investigators turn back to their best evidence in the case, the security video.
We focused on what can we do to improve this video. We reached out to the Secret Service to see what they could do for us.
Could a high-tech digital enhancement reveal the killer's true identity? With little else to go on, investigators are hoping to get a better look at the suspect caught on the convenience store security video. They contact the United States Secret Service.
We had identified that the United States Secret Service had the capability to assist in enhancing the video. And then their first question was, has the camera been changed any? Has it been refocused? Has it been adjusted? Has it been moved? And it had not.
The agents carefully set up equipment in the convenience store parking lot where Rhonda was abducted.
They used a lighting system and basically videotaped the parking lot as it was around the same time in the morning.
They wanted to refilm the incident same time of day, so we came back out here around 6:50 a.m. They set up in this general area. They recorded off the camera at the front door and then also the camera off the side of the building.
After measuring the distance and the focal lengths, a corrective formula is applied.
They used those measurements to determine how out of focus the camera was, and then that allowed them to enhance the video.
And that certainly helped. That it cleared the tape up. We were able to make out the suspect much better. I mean, still not well enough to know that's who it is, but obviously it did make a difference, in my opinion.
The enhanced video provides a clear understanding of both the victim's and the suspect's actions.
One question, I had was, why didn't she drive away as he's outside the vehicle walking around?
The new enhanced video provides the answer.
It was obvious he had the keys. He had control over her. She couldn't go anywhere. He puts the keys in the ignition and starts it himself. You can actually see that in the video. And then they, left at his command, I'm sure.
The enhanced video also refocuses the investigators' search for a suspect. They're now certain Rhonda did not know her abductor.
I didn't see a weapon, but I felt like that was an intimidation factor. Something was being said to her to make her afraid.
This is not an acquaintance. The black male is a stranger to her. This was an important piece of the investigation. We believed at that point if we identified the man that got in the car, we would identify her killer.
10 days after Rhonda's body is discovered, investigators get a surprising new lead from an unlikely source.
We did receive a call into the sheriff's office that some rabbit hunters out in the lower part of the county and did discover some items which appeared to be from a pocketbook.
They locate a wallet, some clothing, a prescription bottle with Miss Ward's name on them.
The items that were found in the field were probably 20 to 30 minutes away from the location where her body was discovered.
Investigators return to the wooded area and conduct a detailed search.
More property is identified to include underwear, clothing, jewelry. More personal items are actually located just beyond where these individuals had began to hunt.
And those items were collected and sent to our State Law Enforcement Division for additional analysis.
Detectives also canvass the area for witnesses. At first, residents are reluctant to talk.
The area that we were in was a crime area that relates to drug transactions. And we interviewed some people that I think once they realized we weren't interested in making a drug case, this was a homicide and the type that it was, they were actually more than willing to help us with it.
An occupant in a nearby crack house tells detectives he traded jewelry and a car stereo for drugs. It's a major break in the case.
We were able to determine through this informant that the possible suspect we were looking for went by the nickname of Snow.
Put that together with the fact that we found Rhonda Ward Goodwin's car and the radio was missing. All of a sudden, you know that Snow is a suspect.
The informant tells detectives that Snow had a strange request.
The male actually asked for a pair of pants from the homeowner and makes a reference to that his pants were dirty. So the homeowner gives him a pair and switches out the pants. Now, the original pants from the male were discarded by this time, but however, we've got a male with property, with Miss Ward's car, and now wanting to change clothes.
Then another crucial lead from the witness. He says that Snow was not alone.
This is huge because now the homeowner was able to give us a full name of the female that was with Snow. So we locate that female and interview her.
The woman confirms that Snow traded a car radio and jewelry for cocaine. And there's more.
She actually traveled in Miss Ward's vehicle while the driver and her were on a drug binge for several hours. She also indicates that the driver went back to the location of the property that was found by the hunters, and he walks into the woods and comes back out with cash. And then they go on, they continue their drug binge.
Finally, one last piece of critical information.
She was able to provide the true name for Snow as being Frederick Antonio Evans.
Investigators learn that Evans has a criminal record.
We determined that Frederick Antonio Evans was a convicted sex offender and he did have a criminal history.
Unfortunately, Evans' name and DNA profile are not in the CODIS database.
There was a law passed in South Carolina that every felon had to make a DNA contribution to put into a database, but there was no funding for it. So despite the fact that Frederick Evans was a convicted felon and had served time in the South Carolina Department of Corrections, his DNA was not in our database.
We put out a BOLO, be on the lookout for Frederick Antonio Evans, his physical description, try to contact family members at just anywhere where we may can find him to speak with him to see if he knew see what information he knew about the murder of Rhonda Ward.
It's a strong lead, but the seasoned investigators remain cautious.
It's probably the strongest lead that we had in the case, but it is just that. It is a lead. It's not definite. We don't know where that lead's going to take us.
With the prime suspect finally identified, investigators review the evidence. Rhonda's wallet, jewelry, and clothing are tossed in a wooded field. A woman says she rode in Rhonda's car with a man named Frederick Antonio Evans. She also says Evans traded Rhonda's car radio for drugs. Detectives have a strong circumstantial case. What they need is the hard physical evidence that will lock away a killer. "35-year-old Frederick Antonio Evans is now the lead suspect in the murder of Rhonda Ward. After TV News airs a report on Evans, investigators learn his whereabouts.
We receive a call from a local jurisdiction that sits on the border of Greenville and Spartanburg County. One of their jail officers has contacted us and says we have an Antonio Evans in custody on driving offenses in our jurisdiction.
And I said, "You got to be kidding. It's great. I'll be there in 5 minutes." It's a 30-minute drive. I was there in about 10.
Before questioning Evans, investigators map out a go-slow strategy.
My focus was to keep him talking. If he was comfortable, I'm going to be comfortable, and we're going to talk. If he wanted to talk about football, whatever it is, keep him talking.
You get one shot at a guy like this. He's a career criminal. He's been in trouble, before, and so you want to be delicate with that. And so I embraced him, made friendly talk with him, and interviewed him.
Evans thinks he's being questioned about a driving offense that recently landed him in jail.
And then we go, okay, by the way, we need to speak to you about a white Nissan. And then we get nothing from him. He says, I don't know anything about a white Nissan. So we continue the process and start providing him information that the witnesses had provided us regarding what he did while he was in that Nissan. So over time, he finally says, okay, I was in a white Nissan. So we go from I was never in a Nissan to I found a Nissan on the side of the roads with the keys in it, and I just took it and started driving it.
But Evans denies knowing Rhonda.
At this time, we show Mr. Evans the video and says, here's the abduction. We'd like for you to look at this video, which he does. And he says, okay, I've seen the video. That's not me.
From looking at the videos that was enhanced, I could tell it was him. His mannerisms, the way that he walked, his physical characteristics, I could tell. Once I knew it was Frederick Evans was a suspect.
Hoping for a confession, detectives switch tactics.
I make a decision to inform him that we have showed this video to other individuals, to include his mother. And his comment was to me, what did she say? And I responded, you know what she said. We were on to something. That he is now thinking we know he's on the video because he has been identified on the video, which is not true. His mother had never seen the video.
Evans decides to change his story.
Well, I knew her. I wanted to get a ride. She was a girlfriend of mine. There's no evidence that they even knew each other that I'm aware of. So that was just another lie.
Evans begins to embellish his alibi. He says he and Rhonda had arranged to meet the morning she disappeared.
It was a scheduled event. He was supposed to be there. The plan was, now this is Mr. Evans telling this, that they would leave, go do drugs, have sex, and then she'd come back to work. Now there's a huge problem with that. She had to open that store at 7. She's abducted at 6:50. The time frame doesn't add up.
But to keep Evans talking, investigators again changed their line of questioning.
We pulled the rug out from up under him one more time and said, we located Miss Rhonda Ward's body. We had not said anything about the murder yet. We're leading him down a path. The path starts with the car. The car leads to the abduction. The next stage is he's the suspect involved in the homicide.
At first, Evans emphatically denies killing Rhonda. Then, a surprising admission.
He eventually comes to he was there when she was killed. That they had done just as he had said with the abduction. They had gone, purchased drugs. They were planning to have sex. When they got there, Miss Ward became upset because he wasn't allowing her to use the drugs, and she attacked him. In defense, he stabbed her and leaves.
Obviously, there's no evidence of that at all. There was no evidence that she attacked anybody.
He had no cut marks. We even questioned him about that. Or this attack, did she strike you? Did she hit you, push you? No, she didn't, but she attacked him.
I had him stand up right there and show me. I said, Frederick, just show me how you killed her. Here's a pencil. That's your knife. Show me.
In a bizarre scene, Evans now demonstrates how he killed Rhonda.
In the reenactment, Mr. Evans says he stabbed her once, but he actually stabbed the fellow investigator 4 times.
Although Rhonda was stabbed 9 times, investigators feel the 4 stabs gestured by Evans is the MO of their killer.
That's when you know that you're very close to closing this case.
But there is one thing Evans refuses to admit: sexually assaulting Rhonda.
At the end of the interview, we asked if we could take a DNA sample, and he said sure. And so we transport him to Spartanburg Regional Hospital, and while we're waiting for a forensic nurse, he admits to having sex with Miss Ward that morning, just out of the blue.
He said, yeah, we had consensual sex. And that's a typical answer that you'll get from somebody, obviously, when they're involved in a forceful sexual assault like he was involved with Rhonda that day.
With Evans in custody, his blood is sent to the state lab for processing. Just one question remains. Why was Evans at the convenience store that morning?
None of his addresses from any of his previous places of residence were anywhere near that cigarette shop. And we struggled with, did somebody drop him off? Was there somebody else involved?
In fact, Evans had once lived right around the corner.
My deputies went and asked the man who managed this very low-end trailer park, have you seen this guy's picture? And he said, yeah, he moved in here, lived here for about a month, and then was gone. And all of a sudden, boom, we had the connection why he would be within 100 yards of Rhonda Ward Goodwin's shop.
Investigators also recover the missing car radio that witnesses reported Evans had used to buy drugs.
We were able to locate who bought the radio and get a statement from that individual where they purchased the radio, and essentially just track that back down to the individual that sold the radio that was in possession of Miss Ward's automobile.
What investigators can't find is the murder weapon, but prosecutors aren't worried. Just 48 hours after Evans' DNA sample is submitted to the state lab, the results come back.
As soon as his sample was submitted, then that was tested immediately and found that it was a hit. His profile did match the profile I had from the semen in the vaginal swabs. And so we know that it is Frederick Evans' semen that was left in this victim.
Though there is no trace evidence belonging to Rhonda on Evans' clothes, investigators are confident they now have her killer in custody.
I mean, we got the guy. I mean, this is the person that did it. I felt very confident after we had the confession, but still, the DNA is just one more piece of the puzzle, along with all the other pieces that had been developed that show that we've got the right guy.
At the end of the day, you're still sad. You're glad that you made an arrest. You have a good feeling about it, but then, at the same time, you feel kind of sad for the victim and the family. You just can't bring her back.
We knew absolutely nothing about him. And I wanted to know where he came from, primarily. So, of course, I asked the girls, the kids again, and they had no idea either. Just a complete stranger.
Frederick Evans is charged with the kidnapping, murder, and sexual assault of Rhonda Ward.
And those are circumstances, obviously, that with a solicitor in this state can choose to seek the death penalty against the defendant.
Evans is also charged with grand larceny for allegedly stealing Rhonda's car.
There was never another serious suspect other than him. You have more than enough to make an arrest with the semen sample coming back to him. Whether or not you have enough to get a conviction and a death sentence remains to be seen.
Then, as prosecutors prepare for trial, they make a stunning discovery. Evans' DNA is also linked to another murder. Is Frederick Evans a serial killer? Get more solved online. "20 months after Rhonda's death, Frederick Evans goes on trial for kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder.
I was just there the whole time because I had made a promise to Rhonda that I would stick with it to the end, that I would make sure that she got her justice. And I stayed there.
It was hard sitting there. All I could do was cry. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever had to do.
DNA evidence is crucial to the prosecutor's case.
And the semen is what puts him there. There are too many ways to explain other types of DNA. Semen doesn't just fall out. It requires effort, and it puts into context the crime.
Also critical, the testimony of witnesses involved in Evans' drug spree following Rhonda's murder.
Some of the most important evidence, I believe, in the case was the witnesses' testimony. They were able to identify Mr. Evans. They were able to put him with her vehicle, him with her property, and again, just led the investigation to resolve the case.
In a surprise move, the defense calls Evans to the stand.
It's always different when the defendant testifies. There's such an expectation. Folks who watch television and even very experienced law enforcement officers will say, if he testifies, man, you'll get him on cross-examination. The reality is it's very hard to cross-examine someone who doesn't have a reference point for the truth.
Evans' testimony differs significantly from the original story he first told investigators.
The one that he ultimately settled on and actually testified to, that they were going in February in 30-degree weather outside in an apple orchard to have sex. This mother, who had never been late to work before, was going to abandon all of that because Frederick Antonio Evans is so incredibly irresistible that she could not stop from going in freezing weather to an apple orchard to have sex with him. That was his version.
According to Evans, in the middle of having sex, Rhonda becomes jealous of his other girlfriend.
And she said, if I can't have you for myself, nobody can have you. This, of course, is coming from Evans.
Sobbing, Evans testifies that Rhonda came at him with a knife.
And that he tried to subdue her so she would not hurt herself. That he was behind her, she was in the front. They were facing the same direction. And in some kind of, I guess, modified Romeo and Juliet with a different ending, she just stabbed herself. That was what he testified to the jury. She's going to stab herself 9 times in the chest? Wow.
He was just lying. He was just trying to cover his tail. He was hoping that perhaps he would get a slap on the hand, or perhaps he would not get life in prison, or perhaps he wouldn't get the death penalty.
After only an hour's deliberation, the jury delivers a verdict.
The verdict was guilty. It made me feel good because, like I said, I had made that promise to Rhonda that she would be able to rest in peace knowing that Mr. Evans received the justice that he rightfully deserved.
There was a lot of happy people at the end of the trial. We hugged, embraced each other, and congratulated the lawyers because they did such a great job.
I felt like the Sheriff's Office had put together a very strong case, and it was just satisfying to see all of that to come together and that a jury be able to make sense, identify what was presented, and convict this individual.
Part of our job is speaking for the victims, especially in a homicide case, we're their only voice. And I feel like it was a pretty loud voice that spoke when he was found guilty.
24 hours later, Evans is sentenced to death.
In this case, I think that the evidence is just overwhelming that if you're in the mind of issuing the death penalty, certainly this is a case that would have deserved it, and it did deserve it.
Frederick Evans is now awaiting execution at Lieber Correctional Institute in Ridgeville, South Carolina. As of September 2009, Evans is appealing his conviction.
My goal is first and foremost for Frederick Evans to never, ever be out of jail, ever. If we can put him to death, all the better, but I don't want him out, period.
After the trial, there's one final disturbing revelation. The evidence indicates that Evans was also involved in the 2002 murder of 55-year-old Spartanburg librarian Damaris Huff.
Damaris Huff was a librarian that worked here in the city of Spartanburg. She lived at Duncan Park Lake, which is an affluent neighborhood here in town.
There were some similarities in the Ward case and the Huff case, by them both being laid out, the new bodies.
She was attacked and strangled in Duncan Park. When Damaris was found, she was nude except for her socks, and her clothes were not there.
We did know that the two cases were related, that the same person left a DNA at both crime scenes. So as soon as we solved one, then we would solve the other. So when Mr. Evans' sample was submitted in the Ward case, we also simultaneously solved the Huff case.
They had that match, they could put both the murders together. Then you realize, then you have confirmed the fact that you do have a serial killer.
Evans is charged with Damaris Huff's murder, but the case isn't sent to trial.
Damaris's case is there for us to call and seek society's ultimate punishment if we choose to go that route. I talked it over with Mr. Huff's family. We kind of made the decision that the jury verdict in Rhonda Ward Goodwin's case was going to be the resolution, the closure.
With justice served, Rhonda's family and friends reflect on a life tragically cut short.
Rhonda wasn't only my daughter, she was my best friend. I miss talking to her every day.
She constantly used to tease me a lot. So that's pretty much what I miss a lot. I miss her smile, too. I miss her smile.